computer.
I have to
Well,
click
hello.
OK.
You all sorted. Hi everyone. How are you? It's Trudi. I have got my beautiful friend Naomi Janzen here from Australia. She's Canadian. I met Naomi. Goodness, when did we meet? About 15 years or so ago?
Yeah, I think it was about that. Yeah, about 15
Yeah.
years ago.
Through my dad, and my dad, Naomi lives in a beautiful part of Australia, the Southern Highlands. It's amazing. And my dad lived down there, and he connected me with Naomi because we had a common bond in the TV
Entertainment.
entertainment industry. Yes, because Naomi, you were a co-producer, like you've been a writer and producer for many years, based over in LA. And then we became friends. And then I had a bit of an issue one day that I was telling Naomi about. I formed a bit of a stage fright off a bit of an event, off a stand-up gig. And Naomi, and I was talking to Naomi, just say, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done doing acting and doing all the hustle and everything. And I remember, I can say this in my head, he's like, I got this thing. I can get you back on stage. I'm like, well, if you can get me back on stage, because I really did manifest. Someone gave me feedback. I got really triggered, and it manifested into this mad fear of just not ever wanting to do it again. And so I went to Naomi's house, and out of the blue, she got me doing this tapping thing on my face. But before we go any further, I just want to really introduce who Naomi really is now, because at that time, Naomi was emerging, in my opinion, as one of the world's best trainers. You've been my mentor ever since in this space. So and I'm just going to read off a page here, everyone. It's not perfect because I really want to get this right. You're an accredited, advanced, certified EFT practitioner and trainer for advanced-based EFT and master trainer for EFT International. Wow. You are a writer and co-producer of the documentary The Science of Tapping, which I've got available to send to people if they want, because I subscribe to it, and it's amazing. And it really tells you the science behind it. You also have developed an app, your iOS app of mindfulness, and have made it into Positive Psychology's top 10 Cosmopolitan's magazine, top 8 meditation app list. Woohoo! That's so good. And you share your twin passions of tapping and mindfulness with clients, students, and as you put it, anyone who will listen. So
Anyone.
thank God, you're as bad as me then. Great.
He goes with the territory.
Yeah, so Naomi's been my mentor and trainer, and I think I was probably one of your longest standing students. But here I really want to, as I've started to emerge online about tapping, I really, really wanted to have the opportunity to speak to an expert and a trainer and someone who really changed the trajectory of my life by introducing me to tapping, because I'm massive into my mental health, and I've gone to talk therapy. But as I said to my husband, whilst it was helping a lot and I learned about the inner child and all that kind of stuff and traumas or whatever, nothing felt like it ever shifted till I found this,
Mm.
because my body was talking to me. So I've just got a couple of questions for you.
Mhm.
For mental health,
Mhm.
why do you think adding this little technique, which people might think is a bit weird, makes such a difference in comparison to sort of traditional talk therapy?
Well, first of all, let me say that I have had really, really good talk therapy in my life in
So,
Los
yeah,
Angeles.
yeah,
Yep, in Los Angeles, I was very fortunate to have a really gifted therapist. So I don't put down talk therapy, but I recognize the limitations because I think the easiest way to describe it is if you can understand that your brain kind of has three levels. So there's the super smart high thinking part, then there's kind of an emotional part, and then there's that reactive primitive fight or flight part.
yeah,
I won't go into the different names of them, but if you want to know, take one of the workshops and we'll
yeah,
fill you up with terminology and science. But basically, if you can think of those three parts, talk therapy it actually speaks to the cognitive thinking part. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a talk therapy modality. It's kind of like the therapist's brain talking to the client's brain and
yeah,
saying like, here's a have you ever thought about what happened to you this way? Or here's a new perspective.
yeah.
And that can be incredibly valuable. That can help you recognize patterns and ways that you were being unconscious that you weren't aware of. But where the limitation can be is that the part of your body, for anybody who is out there who's interested in this, a great book is The Body Keeps the Score.
Yep.
Yeah, and so what tapping does is it works with the body and it works with that experiential component that just talking about something can't really touch the sides of. So you've worked through something, you've had great therapy, you've done all kinds of great inner work, but you're still triggered when something happens. You still feel sad all the time, or you still feel a lot of anxiety or nervous about going out in crowds or whatever it may be. And if you've had a phobia, anybody who's listening who's had a phobia knows that being told that spiders are beautiful weavers and they play such an important part in the ecosystem does not get rid of your phobia of spiders.
Right,
I speak from experience because
right,
I had a severe phobia, which
right.
I got rid of with tapping. And so what I think it does is that it it speaks the body's language. So the tapping, I don't know if I've told you, Trudy, this latest kind of thing where I call it Morse code for the unconscious, because the
I
actual
have heard you
tapping
mention it, but
itself,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's like it's speaking the language of the body, of the unconscious, and you're shifting things at a visceral level.
yeah,
And that's why tapping can kind of give that final result, that shifting, that all the understanding, all the thinking understanding of your problem in the whole wide world can often not really reach the part of you that's dictating your behavior and your reactions.
yeah. So true. And it's funny, having experienced a lot of tapping, you notice a difference in your body. Like I didn't realize how much, strangely, I had a lot of social anxiety, and
Mhm.
that's completely collapsed now. So when I go out and I'm sort of checking my body, and the heart rate's nowhere near like beating, I'm kind of chill. Yeah, it's mad. Like, yeah, I understand that. So
And
what?
that's an interesting point too, because people kind of get used to what they think of as normal, and they don't
Yeah,
realize normal is a lot less, it's a lot more uncomfortable than they would be if they didn't have some of these things percolating. And then when after they do the tapping and they're like, I didn't realize how uptight I was, or I
yeah,
didn't feel like I realize how angry I was, or I didn't realize how sad, because that was my everyday normal. And this is, I feel like, this is the real me, that I
yep.
don't have that anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, because I sort of do a check-in now when I go out, and I'm like, no, it's not there. But it was really unconscious to me for a long time,
Yeah.
until something shifted, and then I walked out, because we talk about how we notice things not necessarily after the session, but you walk out and you're like, why do I feel different? And
Yeah, it
then,
might be days later when something
yeah,
happens and then you suddenly go, hang on, I didn't get reactive about that. Who am I
yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah,
I get emails from clients going, so this is what happened and this was my reaction, which was basically nothing. And that always would have triggered me before. Was that the tapping we did?
yeah, that's amazing. That must be really valid. That's unreal. The next one, what's the common issue or challenge you see EFT help people overcome the most? Because you've worked with a lot of people.
Yeah. The first thing that popped into my head right now, because tapping works for so many different
Things.
things, and there's research about all of the things that it works with. So if you're wondering, listening to this, if your issue is covered, go to Evidence-Based EFT website, and there's a new science research page that lists all the studies, and you can
Wow.
find things on there. Um, but the first thing that popped into my head is that when people are struggling with anything, there's a feeling of helplessness,
Yeah.
of where do I get help with this? Do I go to a doctor? Do I go to a psychologist? Do I change my nutrition? What do I do? And the answer might be yes to all of those things, but EFT brings in a component of empowerment because it
Mm.
enables people to do so much of just regulating themselves, regulating the stress that underlies a range of different physical and mental health issues. So people can move a long way towards healing just on their own, which I think is really, really
Yeah.
empowering.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right. Because when people say, what does tapping help for? It's like, well, what does it not help for? And
Yeah,
it's not a placebo, or it's not a cure for anything. It is unbelievable, because it is attached to our nervous system and how we
yeah,
react and respond.
that's right.
Literally help. I mean, how many times have I tapped with you on cravings on chocolate? I still eat it. And sometimes I have my moments, but I certainly don't have the relationship that I did have with it. So it's mad.
And that's the key.
Yeah. So I love this next question. What's the positive side
Yeah.
of the negative, because we all hear so much about positive affirmations, and we know that positive affirmations scientifically can show us that it can have an effect. But
Mhm.
let's be real here, shit happens in our
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And what's the difference? But why is EFT so great in acknowledging the negative? I'd love for you to explain
Well,
that.
first of all, while it may seem that we're tapping on the negative, what we're really tapping on is the truth. And often when you have an issue, the truth of the issue is something that you can frame that feels negative. Like, I'm so angry at my sister-in-law. I'm so scared of asking my boss for a raise. I'm so disappointed in myself because of X, Y, and Z. So all these kinds of things that you might tap on, they're going to sound really negative. But like you mentioned, your chocolate craving,
Yeah,
that's going to sound really positive because you're tapping on how much you love the creamy chocolate, the way it smells, the beautiful wrapping of that special chocolate bar you get at David Jones, or, whatever it is.
yeah,
You're tapping while you focus on all the positive aspects of that chocolate that you like too much.
yeah,
So all we're really doing is we're acknowledging the truth, and all of the positive affirmations in the world are not going to really make a difference if there's a great big gnarly negative underneath that
yeah,
is unacknowledged and unaddressed. And so what tapping does is it says, let's let the positive just kind of arise naturally, because it will, when we address the negative feelings, the negative thoughts, the negative experiences that are stopping us from being in touch with the positive. So I don't know if that answers the question.
It
Does
does.
that?
It does, because I've also, when I've worked with you and trained with you, and we've also acknowledged it, and even with people I've worked with, when they start tapping, we do what we call the exposure therapy, which is sort of acknowledging the truth slash the problem, the negative, and we do the
Mhm.
cognitive reframe. I accept myself in this moment. We do see people going, it's okay to say this. And then you see them cross a bridge going, oh my God, I really want to acknowledge the negative. Like when they first start
Yes.
doing it, it's like, I've got permission to say this. Like, you're giving me permission to
Oh, yeah.
say this.
That's right, because we're so used to it. Think about it. Like, if you have a whinge about something, like let's say you're feeling really resentful about something,
Yeah,
and mostly you keep it to yourself because you don't want to sound like a whinger, but you might say to your best friend or your partner or something like that, you might kind of say, well, I can't believe that such and such, because, that's not fair. And I did blah, blah, blah. And then like a little whingy thing. You usually get advice. You usually get life coaching back from the person that you say that to.
yeah,
Even if you say that to a therapist, a lot
yeah,
of times you'll get, I understand that you're sounding, it seems like you sound like you're feeling really treated unfairly. Let's unpack that. Let's look at that. But it's about sort of helping you to understand that maybe you're contributing to it some way, or all this cognitive stuff. Or with tapping, we meet you where you are.
yeah.
So you're feeling like a whinge. Go for it. We're just going to tap while you have a whinge. And people are often surprised that they are not being encouraged to think positively. In fact, they're being encouraged to lean into it. We just want you to tap while you're leaning into it. That's all. And that can be incredibly liberating for people, but also a little confronting sometimes, because you have people who have been taught their whole lives, don't cry, don't complain, don't whinge. It's bad to be angry. We then have to kind of tap on that conditioning before people even feel safe
Yeah.
acknowledging and expressing negative emotion.
That's a big thing that we do is keep everyone safe. And I think a bridge I've crossed was really embedding my emotions down for many, many years. And from all the work that I've done, personally, I've never been in touch with my emotions more. So it doesn't mean you become emotionless. You actually recognize your emotions and you honor them, and you go and, express them. And
Yes.
that's a safe way to be, and a better way to be too. Because
That's
sometimes,
right. And when you start tapping, you often find you have a backlog of emotions that haven't been expressed. And so it feels like, oh, and I've had people after the first sort of session going, is it going to be like this every time? No, it's like if you try to tip a little bit of water out of a bucket that's completely full to the top, it's going to slosh.
yeah,
But after you've taken the water level down a little, now you can tip it, and kind of let a little bit of water out at the time. But emotion that's appropriate to what's happening is healthy.
yeah,
Emotion that is way over the top for what's happening, like, that person just cut you off in traffic and you have the urge to literally kill them.
yeah.
That needs to be looked at. That means there's something back there
Got back
that
there.
hasn't gotten dealt with. Yeah.
So what are some of the misconceptions people have about EFT or tapping?
It depends on where the people have been kind of introduced to tapping. If people have been introduced to tapping by watching a lot of YouTube videos and things, one of the misperceptions or misconceptions they have is that it's important to get positive really fast. That that it's you start mildly on the negative, but then you have to get positive. A big one is about tapping scripts. They think there's such a thing as like a magical incantation, a tapping script, and tapping scripts are not really it. The goal of the EFT, the beauty of it is getting specific about your specific experiences. What happened to you that makes you have those attitudes towards yourself, the world, other people, those limiting beliefs and so on. And then tapping goes in and we apply tapping to, you said the exposure part, just thinking about the different elements, the different aspects of what happened to you while we tapped. There's no script for that because it's individual. It's not one size fits all. So that's a big one. Another one, there's lots of other ones. Another one is somebody might say, that kind of stuff doesn't work for me because I don't believe in that sort of stuff. Well, back when there was no scientific foundation of understanding, it was observed that it didn't really matter if you believed it or not. You could be an absolute full-on skeptic and get amazing results. And then they would say, well, that's the placebo effect. And it's like, my answer was always, okay, I'm a big fan of the placebo. Now that's been ruled out. So we know it's not the placebo effect because that's been ruled out in clinical trials. But EFT works if you are doing it with especially a qualified practitioner who's been properly trained. You'll get the results whether you think you will or not.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that the critics of EFT are, I would say 99% people who have never tried it. They just don't reckon that it works because for whatever reason in their training, it doesn't make sense that it would work. And then there's the 1% that have actually tried it and it didn't work. And I say to them, did you work with a properly qualified practitioner? Because quite often when someone said, I get a lot of people coming to me who have tried it, it didn't work. Now they're willing to give it a try again because their friend had amazing results and they're like, okay, I'll give it another try. I'll go to Naomi because she's a trainer, maybe, whatever. And I find out when I ask, so how did you tap before? And they kind of tell me, and I realize they didn't tap with a properly trained practitioner. They did surface tapping, general tapping, placebo, the kind of tapping that feels good in the moment, but doesn't actually go deep. And the analogy is like gardening. You can strip all the leaves off a weed, that weed will grow back. The garden will look great for a short period of time, but the weed's going to grow back. And clinical EFT with a properly trained practitioner is pulling the weeds out by the roots.
Yeah, and doing it. Lovely. Yeah, because one thing I find about tapping is, okay, number one, we tap and we connect with our body. And as we talk through, I guess, the negative thing, it helps calm our nervous system or our amygdala. But what I find it to be so profound is it actually taps into our unconscious memories. It connects us to memories that we had that we haven't even thought of in years. And this is something that I just don't think working with, I guess, in a talk therapy environment, this comes up because everyone goes off because the world's becoming aware of childhood trauma being triggered. But quite often it's like, what's the trigger? What has I've been found so profound from my own experience and just working with people is when they sort of sit there going, and you're like, what's that? I'm like, I've just thought of something that I haven't thought of in years. Why is this connected to what we're working on today? And it's amazing how the brain through the tapping delivers that memory or event, as we call them. And that's when that kind of guides you on where to go. As it's amazing how the body's talking to us. Like, can you speak to that part from your experience with the thousands you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the things that's so cool about tapping. Modalities that are working directly with your conscious thinking mind, they might say something like, where do you think this lack of confidence comes from? And you will think that the lack of confidence comes from well, and you'll have maybe some ideas, or maybe not. Maybe you won't have a clue, but let's say you have some ideas. Well, I think it's this, and I think it's that, and I think it's that.
Mm.
There's a 50% chance you're actually wrong in terms of what you think it is, because that part of your brain doesn't know where it came from. But if you ask the body, which we do while we tap, it kind of opens up the unconscious, kind of feels invited to the conversation.
Yeah.
And then, so if I say to somebody, where do you think this came from? It might be a rehearsed answer, or it might be something that makes sense, right? Logical sense. Well, it's logically connected to such and such. And like, fear of flying is an example. If you ask someone, where do you think this fear of flying came from? They will usually give you, oh, well, I was on a flight that had bad turbulence about 5 years ago, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then that's where the tapping goes, and that's where you stay, and you don't go any further. Or with talk therapy, you just try to talk it through, to tell me about the turbulence. What made you think you weren't safe? All this kind of stuff. With EFT, we have you tune into how it feels to be afraid of flying. And then we ask you, when did you feel this feeling previously in your life? And you might get a surprising answer like, my grandmother's funeral when I was 11. And
Yeah.
that doesn't cognitively have anything to do with fear of flying. But what it turns out is that it's connected to a feeling of complete loss of control
Yeah.
over the situation, maybe. And that's what's triggered by being in the airplane and the pilot's got control of the plane and you're not driving. Your conscious mind never would have gotten there.
Yep.
So when we tap, we ask the body, and what that looks like is we go into kind of a state of mild waking hypnosis. I'm talking about the kind of hypnosis that, when you drive from point A to point B and you have not been paying any attention because you're thinking about what happened yesterday,
Yeah.
and somehow you've managed to stop at lights and turn at the right corners and everything. And you just go, oh my God, I was not present for that drive at all. That's the same. It's a waking up hypnosis state. So part of you is paying attention to the road rules and driving and being safe. Another part of you is off in this story about what happened. So when we tap, we get into that same zone, and then we ask that part of you, we ask in that zone, when have you felt this same feeling before? We don't say, when has this exact same thing happened to you? We're not looking for a logical answer.
Yeah.
We're asking the unconscious, hey, where does this come from? And the unconscious goes off in a completely different direction than your conscious mind would have gone. And that's the real direction. And a lot of times it's like, it makes no sense until after you're done. And then you go, oh, now I see how that makes sense. But sometimes you don't even know how it makes sense. You're just
Not
cured.
really. It is. It's like snakes and ladders. We're going in the space. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of shifts have you witnessed in people that you can talk about?
Oh, I'll be general. I've
Yeah.
seen people's lifelong insomnia go away because we worked on a childhood trauma.
Wow.
I've seen lifelong back pain go away because we worked on some really bad experiences and traumas early in life.
Yeah.
I've seen fear of public speaking completely go away. I've seen depression go away. I've seen people who are stress puppies just become super chill.
Yeah.
I've seen physical things, amazing, they've happened to me too. Healing, physically healing of wounds and healing from surgeries and things like that. Because when you're tapping, you're taking stress off the body. And hey, guess what? When you're not stressed, your body does that thing that usually takes a lot longer, way shorter. So yeah, I've just seen
Actually
so
happened to
many.
me when my dad died. I had frozen shoulder.
That's right.
Yeah. And I could put a picture on that, but yeah, I couldn't because he had secondary cancer in his shoulder. So I thought, oh my God, my shoulder's stuck. And then you had to safely help me go
Yeah.
through that. But and then I had a little healing bruise come out and I could move my arm the next day.
Isn't
So
that great?
yeah. So yeah. And it's funny because I'm like an actor and I do comic and comedy and all that stuff. I always thought I'd be the best comedian in the world, but I reckon I could be for tapping. I reckon I've done it on everything,
Oh,
when it
yeah.
comes to physical pain and emotions and all that kind of stuff. But I think anyone that really embraces this realizes that you can use it for so many different things.
Yeah.
So EFT is incredibly effective for big and little trauma.
Mhm.
and helping people safely work through it. Recently, you've spoken about the difference between a traumatic event, say like a big car accident or something, and traumatization per se.
Mhm.
And I found it really fascinating what you said. Can you tell me a bit more about that and why you think it's important to to differentiate them?
I think it's important because we use normally just in the discourse out there about trauma, and the whole world is a little bit more trauma informed than they were 10 years ago,
Yeah.
because of that understanding of the mind body connection and trauma being stored in the body, and you can't talk your way out of a trauma response. But what I discovered was, and just working with clients with trauma, is that when we talk in tapping and people come to tapping with the expectation that we're going to get rid of something or collapse something, if someone's had a really terrible trauma early in their life, then when sort of presented with the idea of collapsing or getting rid of that trauma, there's like a feeling of disconnect. It's like, well, I'm not going to get rid of that because gosh darn it, it happened to me, or it's part of my story, or some good things came of it too. And so I started thinking about, really, we use the word trauma, whether we're describing the traumatic thing that happened or the effect of the traumatic thing. Well, let's separate the two of them. Let's say there's trauma and then there's traumatization. Traumatization is the knock-on effect. It's the flow on. It's the result of that traumatic event. So the car accident, for example, analogy, if there was a car accident 15, 20 years ago, that person might still be traumatized. They're nervous in a car. Every time the person they're driving with does something suddenly, they scream and grab things in the car and go, "Oh my God, don't do that to me!" And super overreactive because there's a
Yeah.
lot of trauma there. So I found that by presenting to the clients that what EFT does is it works with the traumatization. Nothing's going to get rid of the fact that you had that car accident 20 years ago. It's part of your story. It's part of your experience. It's part of, even if it's terrible, it's part of just the contrast and richness of life. We're not going to try to take a piece out of your story. But do you really have to still have the echoing reaction from it? Is that really serving you? Because
Yeah.
maybe it isn't. And I've found that people have really warmed to that, the people I'm working with that have trauma. And I say, how about if we think of it this way? Do you feel like you're more comfortable tapping on the traumatization rather than trauma itself? And I've had absolute enthusiastic uptake about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you put it that way, let's get rid of this traumatization.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. It's really good. I love that. Thank you. What would you give advice to someone that's new to EFT who might be a bit skeptical of its benefits or possibly wanting to start working through their stuff? Because quite often we hear people going, I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Mm.
Very good in Western society by waiting until we're so broken, we start to fix ourselves.
Well, that's true with everything.
I know, right? And maybe that's the starting point. So it's not or they're simply too scared to go down a rabbit hole, because I've also heard people going, I'm so terrified of what this could bring up.
Yeah, that's a common one.
Yeah. What would you say to that?
Let me talk about two different kinds of people. We'll separate them into the people that are terrified of going down the rabbit hole. I've also heard opening Pandora's box,
Yeah.
and then just people who are skeptical. Let's put those into two categories. So first of all, people who are skeptical, I'm a fan of skeptics. When it's healthy skepticism, and healthy skepticism is show me the evidence.
Yeah.
Show me the proof. And so my first thing would be get yourself a really good practitioner and try it for yourself, because all the studies in the world are not going to convince you that this is helpful for you. Give tapping a try.
Yeah.
And for the people that are really scared about it, what I want to say is that when EFT, one of the beautiful things about EFT is that there are built-in techniques that work with distancing to create safety. And by safety, I mean you're never working outside your window of tolerance. You are not being re-traumatized. A properly trained practitioner that is trauma-informed knows how to keep you comfortable and safe. And I've worked with so many people that say to me, wow, I'm so surprised that that was so much more gentle than I thought it would be, because there are a lot of talk therapy modalities where the trauma hurts as much on the way out as it did on the way in, because talking about it, just going straight there can re-traumatize you,
Yep.
which is what we're starting to understand now. So EFT is very, very carefully constructed clinical EFT, done properly, again, by a trained practitioner who knows the trauma techniques, is gentle, safe. It moves slowly. It goes at your pace, if not even slower than you want to go, because you want to dive straight in, and we're going, let's just pull you back by the suspenders a little bit, because let's just pace this and keep you safe. And it's effective, and it's getting results even while you're working that gently.
Yep.
So I would say to those people, work with a very well-trained practitioner, do your homework, make sure it's somebody who has the proper training, and you will be safe.
Yep. Amazing. I was going to say the beauty of working with a practitioner, but you've pretty much explained that one. And what are the benefits that you've personally found from tapping?
Oh, wow. Well, the very first one was clearing my depression, because I had severe depression for about almost 2 years
And it's
when I first moved.
exhausting.
It's
Depression,
exhausting.
getting out of bed's like doing a 10K run, I
I
reckon.
mean, and there's so much depression advice that's like, change your lifestyle in 50 million different ways. And you're like, I can't even brush my teeth. Excuse me. I just
don't
need to
even
be in a
want to.
dark room crying.
Yeah.
In fact, my book that I'm actually working on now, I've finally picked it up again and now making progress on it, is called Tapping Out of Depression,
Yeah.
even when you barely care enough to try, because it recognizes the
Amazing.
exhaustion. And so I won't go into my whole big story, but I had tried lots of other things. They weren't working. I was on the verge of going to medication. And a friend suggested I give this EFT thing a try, sent me the free manual. And I was just so exhausted. It seemed like that would be easier to try. So I didn't think it would work. I was just trying to get her off my back. And I tried it, and I got this amazing result, and it was permanent. And then I was a total tapping convert. There was no science back then, but I was just all about, what the hell is this? I want to try it on everybody I encounter that expresses any kind of discomfort. I tried it on every single thing that came up for me. I would, let's see if tapping works on this. And then I eventually got trained and so on. But as I mentioned a little while ago, physical things, I sprained my ankle, and this is going to sound so overblown. In 45 minutes of tapping, my ankle, which had swelled up. Anyone here who has ever sprained their ankle knows that that swelling is instantaneous.
Yeah.
You have a cankle within 30 seconds.
I did it at Luna Park, and my husband had to walk away because I was off and it helped. Yeah.
How long did you tap for when you did
About
it?
15 minutes. It was a slight twist, but
Yeah, right,
I
okay.
knew I'd twisted it and I could feel it straight away. So I just went and
Yeah,
said,
good.
you told me you'd done this. So do what Naomi did.
Yeah, because I mean, I sprained mine so badly. The neighbors would have heard it snap. And I was facing I had a manual transmission. I was facing many, many weeks of not being able to drive my car because of not being able to work the clutch and so on. So I had all kinds of time. I just sat myself down and started tapping. I tapped for about 45 minutes. I tapped on all the aspects of it. And I've got a blog post on my website if anyone wants to read that whole story. And it's called, I think, Tapping on EFT for an Injury or something. I can't remember the name of it, but you can just go and look. And I've tapped, I cut myself really deeply when I was trying to wash something that had a sharp edge, and it was like, and I sat down and I just elevated it and tapped again for about 45 minutes. And I could not find where the cut was to put the Band-Aid on.
Yeah, wow.
These are things that if they hadn't happened to me, I would not believe them. I don't need tapping to be able to do that. It's just that it did it. And so amazing physical things like that. And those are just my stories, but lots of other ones of people, clients and colleagues and so on. And people who have tapped for their own physical things based on my stories. They've remembered them, just like you at Luna Park. So what else for me? I mean, everything. I've just been using it my whole entire life. It feels like since then, anything that comes up, I've used it to remember things. I've used it to deal with, like in relationships, when you feel like you have a thing or two to say to your partner because you need to correct that behavior or that assumption or whatever, I always go, let me sit down and tap on my own reaction first. And 50% of the time, there is nothing left to discuss when I'm done because it was all about me.
I'm the same. I do that, but it works two ways. I realize either it's my issue or it's taken the sting out of it. And if I do need to have a conversation, it's much more measured. So
100%.
that's where it's massively helped me. I'm a bit like you. I even find just sometimes doing a couple of rounds of tapping just chills me out. Or if
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot during the day, I do it before I go to bed just to calm my mind. I do it
Mm-hmm.
to music, meditation music. There's
Mm-hmm.
amazing things that you can use it for on little, not whilst it honors a lot of the trauma and stuff we can work through. It's also great for setting a daily intention and just tapping on that.
Mm.
I find that it really kind of
Yeah.
sucks into your psyche. It's great before you do performing work.
It's
Like
great before you meditate too. Like, if people who are, when you sit down to meditate and the monkey mind is going crazy. And I know one of the points of meditation is to try to just kind of observe the monkey mind and not get drawn into the thinking. But the reality is that the monkey mind can be like a young child who's whining to be fed. You can't meditate when you've got a little kid there who wants to be fed.
yeah,
So what I find is I can sit there and tap on whatever that thing that is that's coming up, even though I'm sitting here trying to meditate, but I keep having this anxiety about this chore I have to do tomorrow. I accept myself anyway. And you just sit there going, I'm thinking about the chore. I don't know if I can do it. Like, I don't have the right equipment really. And I'm a little resentful. I shouldn't have to do this. That guy should have done it right when he was here last week. And you're kind of working through it and you do, and then you've calmed it down. And now I can meditate because that thing needed attention.
yeah.
So that's another thing that I use it for quite often. And I've used it. Oh, a really cool one is my spider, my arachnophobic phobia. I was absolutely off the charts. Off the charts. Like, I would go unconscious if I suddenly
Here in
saw it.
Australia.
I how I know there is a God is because I didn't see my first huntsman until after I got over my arachnophobia. I wouldn't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
I would have been on a plane. I would have jumped to grab a plane and jump and climb in. It would have been on the news.
Yeah.
Because when I actually saw my first huntsman after I'd collapsed my arachnophobia, I looked at it and I went, wow. I would not have been able to look. It was on the ceiling right above my bed. And as I was going to bed, and my first thought was, that looks like Dr. Seuss drew a spider to try to freak people out as a
They're
joke.
big and they're furry.
They're hairy and ridiculous, but
Yeah,
I knew they were safe, and I knew that they're wonderful. So many people they
it
take
won't
care of
matter.
mosquitoes and flies, and I literally had the thought, well, I know they're harmless, and I'm so tired, and I don't know where the step ladder is to go and get up there and try to take it off the ceiling. And the whole time I'm thinking these things, there's a part of me going, who am I right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Who have I become that I would even, that I'm still looking at it and it's many seconds have passed. I haven't passed out or run out of the building screaming. Ultimately, I decided, no, I'm not going to go to sleep because if it's not there in the morning, then I'm going to really wonder where it
You'll be
is. So,
snuggling up with you on the
which is
pillow.
hilarious because I see them all the time. Like, it's not like my house is full of them, but everybody has at least one or two massive ones that they don't see very often because they go behind paintings and things. And every now and then you see one and they're out there going, oh, sorry, is it okay? And I'm like, you're okay, just don't go near a light switch. I don't want any surprises. And I've taken them gently outside when they are, when they sit on the light switch or something. I'm like, all right, you've overstayed your welcome. You're going out into the garden. But I'm gentle with them. That's a different person. Like if the me of like 10 years ago could glimpse the me of now in relation to spiders, wouldn't have believed it. Would have thought that's a parallel reality right there.
Yeah.
That's evidence of parallel universes, because
Yeah.
not in this universe. But there have been lots and lots of different things. So many things that I can't even really think of
Anyone,
all of
yeah,
them, you know?
because it just helps you, what do they say, holistically. So
Yeah,
what
exactly.
do you see in the future of EFT in terms of mental health and wellness practice?
In the same way that the internet has given rise to empowerment of individuals around their health care,
Yeah.
um, and enabled them to kind of go and get answers when the doctors are scratching their heads.
Yeah.
I think that EFT is empowering people to, as I said at the very beginning of our chat, that it empowers people to take care of themselves. And it may not be that EFT isn't the answer to whatever your problem is, but hey, it sure is easy to give it a try and see if you can make a difference in the now. With that, there's no barrier. You can self-tap. You don't need a practitioner for everything. Major
Yeah.
trauma, yes. So I think there is, as it becomes more and more widespread, more and more well known, and I train a lot of psychologists in my practice, and as it's getting more attention for that, I think there's a lot of sort of the mental health establishment kind of being freaked out by EFT and trying to put a lid on it, which will not work because it's in the hands of the people. They can do it themselves. They're
Yeah.
getting the results.
Yeah.
And so I think inevitably that groundswell of just everyday people learning it online, taking workshops, whatever, having this tool in their toolkit enables them to kind of they'll just use it and they tell other people and someone says, why are you so chill these days? You were always so like stressed before. Oh, well, this thing EFT, I should give that a try. And when you try it yourself, that's what keeps bringing people to EFT. They try it themselves. That's what brings all these different studies being done at universities. Studies are expensive to do, and they're not being funded by big companies. They are being funded by fascinated researchers who have tried it themselves and gone, we got to see if we can apply some kind of scientific rigor to this to understand what's going on. And that is just going to continue. It'll break through the resistance of any sort of mental health establishment. It will become ubiquitous. It will be taught from the time you're born, like really young.
Yeah.
It'll be taught to children. It'll be taught in schools. Parents will teach it to their kids. It'll become part of how in workplaces. How long will that take? I don't know, but it's going to end up happening because it's just too easy to not try it.
I'm kind of pissed off that this, because I was someone that went to look after my mental health when it wasn't even a conversation. And it's even taken me on a journey to be even more open about it. But because of the shame, the guilt, and the blah, blah, blah that was associated with it. But I'm almost pissed off that this wasn't landing on my lap as a teenager or an early 20s, because I think my whole trajectory of my life would have been very different.
Well, it
But
would.
uh, because of my unconscious limiting and core beliefs that tapping can uncover,
Hmm.
that we've worked through over many years as well. Because you've been my main person that's worked through me, and you're one of the people I called when I was in a very dark place. And you're like, right, I'm signing you up. And I was like, okay. Um, and really got me out of that dark hole. And yeah, I would implore anyone that's young, and I think a lot of young kids have got a different world to them now because there's so many things coming out, like breath work. Like everyone's doing breath work and ice baths on the beach, but it's amazing how breath work alone
Yeah,
brings up emotions.
yeah.
I've done it at a work event and I was bawling my eyes out. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? So um yeah, I love how, and I think people are recognizing that massages are great for your emotional well-being, and acupuncture. And I mean, this is acupuncture without the needles,
Mhm.
Reiki and all. And I think everyone's starting to understand that there's a balance between all of this. And I even saw Elle Macpherson get interviewed about her cancer the other week, and she said one comment that really intrigued me because
Mhm.
she's gone a holistic route. And obviously, she may have the money and the means to be able to do that, but what a great
Mhm.
case study for the world for her to have done that. But she said she found the root cause of her cancer, which means she might have found the root emotional cause of
Yeah,
that. It'd be so
yeah.
great to fit. It's obviously personal to her, but that's kind of what I read into that. I could be right or wrong.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, But I just hope this marries, because we do need medicine. We do need, everything that doctors and everything can help. But I hope it marries now, that when people have aches and pains or issues, that they're asked how their emotional state's going and what are they doing.
Yeah.
Because you can take your life in your own hands. You can change. You can have a different way of being. And in this stressful world that we're in, this can really help just calm your nervous system down at a baseline. So yeah.
Giving people to help the power and the tools to help themselves in the moment when
Yeah.
something happens, and
Instead
not
of
be
going, oh, I don't
reliant
need
on
my,
somebody else,
yeah,
which is
100%. Which,
so
yeah, because
key.
sometimes it arises at a time that you can't really pick up a phone or whatever. If you just start
Exactly.
doing this, and you don't have to feel like it's right or wrong. Like, you're right about the scripts. People are like, am I doing this right? All I say is just tap and just talk on what you need to tap on, because you're
Yeah.
actually helping yourself.
Or
And
just feel it.
yeah, and just to keep safe, eyes open, whatever, if you sort
Yeah.
of get into a bit of a
Yeah.
dark hole there. But yeah, anything else to say? Anything?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard because I teach these workshops in all, it's,
Yeah.
5 days worth of training. If you say anything else to say, we will be here for 5 days.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, you will. Yeah. And you train people all over the world. And the beautiful thing about tapping, people might think it's a little bit woo-woo, but you can do it from the privacy of your own home, your own bedroom. We do it over Zoom all the time. I think some people
mm,
feel like they've got to be in the same room, but it's not. You can be in your bedroom, and which is almost even better, because you're in the comfort of your own home. Or, I mean, I've tapped
yeah.
a bloody car, for God's sake. I was there. We've had a house full of people. I've just driven in the car, and
Mm,
so and we've got points all over our bodies that you can constantly touch, even if you're out in public in your field, which
yeah.
I do all the time, or find myself doing. So,
In
look,
the dentist chair. When
yeah,
I had some repairs done on some crowns, and that's not pleasant because there's a lot of equipment in your mouth, and you're struggling to breathe, and there's pain and things like that. And I just tapped. I did it in a way that I held my hand against, so I didn't want to create a lot of vibration and
yeah,
mess what they were doing. But I just tapped the entire time, and it was amazing how if I stopped tapping, I would feel my anxiety rising. Even if I just go to a hygienist appointment and get my teeth cleaned, that descaling thing, that loud whine, I
yeah,
do not
yeah,
like that sound. But if I'm just kind of tapping, I'm just rubbing on these points, and I'm totally able to, I go, wow, that's an unpleasant sound, but it doesn't trigger me.
yeah,
And so you can use it in the moment. And I've taught clients of mine who have like conflicts with somebody who's really kind of painful at work. As soon as you get triggered, take yourself off to the toilets, go into a stall, and just start tapping, and you can mouth what you want to say, just,
yeah,
and you don't have to say it out loud because you're tuned into it, you're feeling it. And add the tapping, just try to do it as soon as possible after you get triggered. And then it's like, now I can go back in there and just be calm and smile. It's not going to wreck my whole day. And the value of doing that rather than letting it kind of pile up and build up, and then you've got a backlog to deal with. So being able to nip it in the bud, deal with it straight away, it's the difference between tidying your house a little bit at a time and keeping it tidy versus once every 10 years you tidy your house. You got a lot bigger job to do if you wait 10 years. So that's kind of an analogy.
yeah. Amazing. I love it. Thank you so much. So you're ozfreedomtechniques.com, Naomi Janzen, and you're a master trainer with EFT International. So
Mhm.
this is the global, there's a couple of organizations, but you're with EFT International,
As
and
well as
training.
evidence-based DFT here in Australia.
Yes, that's right. And you work closely with Peter Stapleton from Bond University.
Mhm.
Our Dr. Peter Stapleton, she's a leading psychologist that's leading the globe really in a lot of our research, which
She's
is,
the leading EFT researcher in the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
And
wow, that's
she's a professor of psychology at
yeah.
Bond.
So, having that, I guess, does that give social proof? I don't know, but if people need that, just look that up, which is amazing. But look, I just thank you so much for giving me your time today. And I
Thank
can't wait to
you.
share this with the world. And you've had a big impact on my life. You're one of those few people that have had a massive impact on so many levels. in
Thank
my
you.
life, and I'm incredibly grateful that you're in my world. And
Likewise.
yeah, so thanks so much for your time. And if anyone wants to reach out to Naomi, please do so. I'll put her website on. And if you want to learn how to do some self-tapping, Naomi runs quite a few workshops throughout the year that can help you teach so you can become a self-healer, as they call it. So,
And if you want to do sessions, Trudi is a really good practitioner, I have to
oh,
say. And
thank you.
I
You trained
certified her
me.
myself, so I can I can vouch for the fact that I'm
Very good
really
trainer.
proud of you and impressed with what a good practitioner
Thank
you
you
are. So
very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
thanks, Trudi.